Thank you. And good evening, everyone. Welcome once again gathered for our monthly lecture. And this is a very exciting lecture as well. Today, I'm going to jump a few of the formalities because I know my speaker has another sudden appointment which has come up. So we're going to try to jump in very fast onto Shatrun and have a chat with him. But first, let me also invite many of you who are out there. There'll be a small poll. We are very keen to kind of understand our participants. We typically notch up anything between 1,000 to 2,000, sometimes even going up to 5,000 people who watch these. So it's very useful for us to know who's out there participating, watching these lectures so that we can kind of fine tune and improve this. My thanks to Nations Trust Bank. Um, they've been our co-partner and taken us through this entire journey, and we continue to work with them. This entire NTB WNPS lecture series is a journey which has come a long way from a fairly humble beginning, and Nations Trust Bank have been with us all the way. So thank you, NTB, for making this happen and working very closely with us on the low risk Varna and so many other things. I'm going to skip my usual lecture acknowledgements because we want to kind of maximize this time. So let me first do a brief intro, but also I'm going to get two people on camera and I'll tell you why. So let me invite, I can see someone online, which is Chitral. So let me put Chitral and Shatrun both on camera, right? Because there's a bit of a history to this conversation. Hi, Chitral. Good evening.
Good evening, Shian. How are you?
Good, sir. How are things? And Shatrun, hi. How are you? Okay. I think we're not getting Shatrun's mic well enough.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's perfect. Fantastic. Thank you.
Hello,
So,
good evening.
good evening. Let's quickly start with a quick word from Chitral because Shatrun, as you know, is a winemaker turned conservationist. He's turned into amazing wildlife cameraman. He's co-authored the books on leopards and shepherds of Jawai, and done work with Nat Geo, all of that. He's really entrenched in this whole ecosystem. But the person who really stumbled on this is Chitral. So. Uh, Chitra, maybe you can start by telling me a little bit about the background of how you came to know Shatrun, and then I'm going to jump into Shatrun.
With pleasure, Shian. And namaste, Shatrun.
Hi, how are you? I've just
Very
put
good to see
my
you.
screen off because we've got limited network here, so my screen gets hazy. Anytime you want me to come in with the video on, let me know.
All right.
Yeah, Shian will do that. So, Shian, I've tried to sort of take Sri Lankan photographers beyond Sri Lanka into wild things, and it started back in 2014. And in 2015, interestingly, I was filming with a BBC team, the Leopards in Yala, Sri Lanka, and the producer Tom asked me one day, Chitral, have you come across this little 2-minute video clip? And National Geographic once made a film about the leopard hills of India. And I said no, and he played that for me on his laptop, and just 2 minutes just kind of hooked me into this really magical mountainous location. And I started reading about a little bit about Jawai and the leopard hills of India. And on a National Geography site, I came across, almost stumbled upon a single line that struck me very deeply, and that line said, "Devotees of Shiva, God of all wild things, the people of Bera has figured out how to coexist with one of India's most feared predators, the leopard." And once I saw that, I just thought I must visit that. And in 2016, on a visit to Ranthambore to see tigers with some of my friends and guests, we extended the tour through a mutual introduction from an Indian friend whom I was put in touch with, Shatrunjay Pratap Singh. And I had the great privilege of driving 7.5 hours from one end of Ranthambore all the way to Bera. with two dear friends with whom I travel often. That was you, Shriyan, and Shamindra. So it was myself, Shami, and Shriyan. We took this tedious drive because we skipped two more flights otherwise to get closer to Jawai. And and we went there and we got in touch with Pratap, and we naturally connected because there was this winemaker turned conservationist photographer, videographer, with a background of mine, which also naturally is a photographer who loves to make video films about wild Sri Lanka. It was a natural connection, and we still argue quite vigorously about which location is most dense for leopard in the world. While I keep promoting Yale, Pratap argues no, it's
Okay.
Jawai.
Yeah.
Let's start. Let's find out today. Thanks, Chitral.
Yes.
Thanks, and as you heard, thanks to Chitral, Shamindra, and myself. We went on an amazing couple of days and met this wonderful guy, Shatrun. So let's kick off things. Let's get some slides on deck because everybody is keen to understand, what goes on in this amazing place. And as you jump into this amazing land, you'll understand more and more. So we are going to run today's lecture more in a Q&A kind of discussion format. Shatrun, so we'll get the lectures going. So let's start looking at the slide deck as we stand. And
Sure.
Shatrun, we can start to talk a little bit about, give us a feel of the place, the landscape, and a bit of the history and a bit of the population and all of that. And then we can start going into the leopard conversation.
See, this Pera Jawai region, this is in southwest Rajasthan. And along this area, the hills that you see, these are the Aravalli mountain range. The Aravalli mountain range is the oldest mountain range in the world. And now this area lies between Kumbalgarh Sanctuary and Mount Abu Sanctuary. We are in the valley down. And all these rocks are volcanic rocks. Millions of years back, there was a volcanic eruption. So that's how these rocks were formed. And when they cooled down, all these cracks were formed. And these cracks are homes, these hills are homes to these leopards. At the moment, we have anywhere around 50 to 60 leopards in this 20 square kilometers of area, which I
Wow.
think is the highest density of leopard population if you calculate it per square kilometer wise.
Okay, so we will continue the argument on another day, but let's let's talk a little bit about the leopards while we run through some of this. I mean, this is a hilltop picture of a beautiful view, and Shatru, let's talk a little bit about So you spoke about anything up to 60 leopards. Uh, Talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges we see there. What do they prey on, for example? And what are the other animals in the area, so that we start getting a flavor of this before we jump in deeper into this topic.
See, if you see this picture, the habitat, this is the ideal habitat for leopard. I mean, they get the perfect home, those rocky mountains for them to live. And the plains that you see down, those are the grazing areas. The entire story here is the leopard and the shepherd, because all the leopards in the area are totally dependent on shepherds for their livestock, for their prey. And 99% of all the kills here made by the leopard, 99.9%, is all livestock. The
Okay.
local community here is the Rabari community or the Devasi community. So they are herdsmen, and each house has got about 20 to 30 goat, sheep, cows. So the entire story here is the leopard and shepherds, which have been living here for hundreds of years together in perfect harmony.
So, I mean, for us, this is a very alien idea here in Sri Lanka, and that's what got us bowed when we came there as well, right? So, before we start unpackaging that, talk to us a bit more about what are the other animals and the other occupants of this space.
The other animal top of the chain is the leopard here. Then we've got sloth bears here. Then we've got antelopes here. Wild boars are here. There's a Jawai lake. We've got a lot of species of migratory birds coming. There are crocodiles here. Uh, Wolves also we have. There are the striped hyenas that we have here. So it's a
Wow.
proper entire flora and fauna is flourishing here, and that too with humans around without any problem.
Super. So Shatrun, this is something that we are struggling to kind of break through and understand and unpackage, at least to see what lessons we can learn for Sri Lanka, because we've been stepping on each other's toes for yonks, and this past year was probably the worst as far as leopards were concerned in Sri Lanka. We had anything from 14, 15. Identified leopard deaths due to snares and other things. So it's been a sad story. We're struggling to kind of see what we can do. But first, let's spend 2-3 minutes looking at a small video clip which kind of sets some context for this conversation. So let's roll this video.
A far greater threat to the leopards here stems from the very rocks that they call home. In the past few decades, mining has been rampant in this region, very often unregulated. I'm meeting with one man here who has been fighting off mining interests for years in this region, while advocating for responsible tourism.
A few years back, there were 9 mines which were allotted. Another 144 were in the pipeline. It took us almost 2.5 to 3 years to fight the mining. The government passed a notification of premature termination. After that, we see an increase in leopard population, and I've personally gone and photographed leopards in the area where mines were supposed to be allotted.
And you've seen them there?
Yeah, I've seen them there.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What do you think sets Beira apart from other regions in India that experience high rates of human-leopard conflict?
The tolerance of Rabari people having leopards in and around them. They worship the Lord Shiva, and Shiva wears a leopard skin, so for them it's a religious point of view also. Leopards have never considered humans as prey base because there's always been plenty of livestock for leopards.
Superb. So that was a little bit of intro into what we are going to see. So these were some of the lovely pictures that I picked up there of these Rabari tribes. But before we jump there, I'm going to pause for a minute, Shatrun. In Sri Lanka, also we are just hearing about a new, one of our most pristine areas, Mana, which is there's some abundant bird life and amazing area which is now under the threat of mining. Right. So,
Wow.
any tips in terms of how you approach that conversation?
You see, what happened was mining was allotted somewhere around 2013, I'm talking about. And that time, this area was not that popular like what it is today for leopards. And nobody was taking it seriously. We didn't have any idea how many mines were to come. And that time I came to know about the mining, that the government has allotted some mining. We got in touch with the mining department, did some homeworks. And then what I started doing is getting all the hoteliers, people related to tourism, starting involving in. And it was a joint effort. All of us then went, spoke to the politicians, spoke to the villagers, because if the mining would have come in, it would be a habitat destruction. The mining was promising for employment, which would not happen because 100 people's work one machine would be doing. So that was also not going to happen. But at that time, the farmers were really excited about mining coming in because their land values had suddenly shot up from, for example, if it was 10 rupees, they were offered 50, 100 rupees for that land. They wanted the mining. And then one day I was just sitting in my room. There's a calendar hanging of Lord Shiva. And I was just looking at that picture, and that's when I realized that the Shiva, the Lord Shiva, is sitting on a tiger skin and wearing a leopard skin, and that's how we started getting the religion involved in between the mining and the local community. And all the Rabaris, they worship Lord Shiva. It's their god. So that's when we explain them that, listen, and most of the hills here have got Shiva temples on the hills. So that's when we told them that, listen, if these mines come, they are going to destroy the habitat. Would you like your God's habitat to be devastated? And that's when things changed and things worked in our favor. We did a PIL and a court case with the forest department. We fought it together, and finally we won the court cases after 2 to 3 years of running around.
Super. So if you can just blow up this particular slide, guys. So you see these people, and this is leopard territory. But I also remember, that particular train that we saw running
Yes, yes,
just
just behind the
alongside
hill.
that. Yeah, just alongside that track. I remember jumping out of your jeep one night to run after a saw-scale viper.
Yes.
And what other such threats do people? You can see the simplicity of this community. Those beautiful ladies, all smiles. They're interesting. Those plastic, lots of bangles on their hands and all of that. What other threats do they face? So that I'm setting the context for this leopard challenge.
See, our threat now, Jawai coming on a international map. There are a lot of people coming, opening hotels, which needs to be controlled in a controlled manner. Safari needs to be controlled. We have to sit down now together and make an entire protocol and a system about how we do our safaris, not overcrowd one place at a time. And like the other thing you said, the major threat in the area is also the railway line. This is the Delhi-Mumbai railway line, and most of Indians travel by train. They carry a lot of food. They waste, throw a lot of food. That's when domestic animals like dogs, pigs, they come to eat it, and leopards come to feed on them. We've been requesting the government, most probably it's going to be done. So this entire stretch of this 15 kilometers is going to be fenced both the sides. They've already made underpasses. So the animals are going to forced to be used underpasses.
Okay. So one of the challenges Sri Lanka has is around, expanding network of highways and into leopard territory and animal territory, which doesn't have adequate underpasses, right? So was there any lobbying that you all did for so many underpasses in that space, or how did it work?
We had to request. There's a company known as L&T. That's a multinational company. We did a project. We did and gave it to the company, and we almost literally threatened them that if this is wildlife is also going to die, and a lot of the local community here, Rabaris, they also go grazing. They lose a lot of livestock while crossing those railway tracks. So we told them that, listen, something needs to be done for the community, for the domestic animals, and for the wild animals. And this stretch needs to be fenced. So they are forced to use the underpasses. And that's when they realize that, yes, that it's going to be an environmental disaster if this thing is not done. We did a lot of press articles also in the news.
Okay. So let's jump to the next few slides where, you can see some pictures of the temples and the people. So these are the kind of typical scenes you see, and this is the temple. So was this really about religion, or what's unique because you have the coexistence and the conflict in other parts of India? What's really unique about this particular Jawai territory, and is it something which will be only linked so closely to religion? What do you
You
think?
see, like I said, Rabari people, they're all devotees of Lord Shiva. Religion definitely plays a role in the coexistence. We don't have any poaching cases here. We don't have any human-animal conflict here. Again, coming back to the Rabaris, since there is so much of livestock in the area, like I said, every house got 20, 30 goat, sheep, cows, like you saw in that picture. The prey base for the leopard has been abundance. And whenever there's a kill, lot of Rabaris don't even ask for compensation from the forest department. They believe it's an offering to their god, Lord Shiva. So the leopard is protected by the people, from the people, and now with tourism coming in, most of the villagers directly or indirectly are connected with the hotels. One of the employees is, one of their family members is working, or one of their relative is working. So there is an economical benefit also to these local communities, which is coming from the leopards. they've realized the importance. They always had importance of leopard, but it has increased much more.
Okay. So people on the call, you can start posting your questions because today we are running on a chat mode rather than a lecture mode. Uh, just take a look at some of these pictures. We start understanding the deep coexistence and the proximity of the leopards to the people. So here's one just above. Let's go to the next one as well, which really drives home the point. Next slide, please. Okay, this is fascinating. So
And
Shatrun,
that's the
uh,
priest
yeah,
in the
yeah.
balcony and the
Let's
leopard
go back
sitting
to
there.
the priest one, right? Talk to us a little bit about this whole behavior because I saw some of this and I was going wow when we were there. Talk to us about this proximity and how does this whole thing work?
You see, Chitral, this is the same hill, Perwa, where you had gone. You did few morning drives there and got some beautiful pictures also.
Yeah.
And there's a priest. He's no more now. There's another priest. But I mean, the relationship between this guy has been staying there for many, many years, 10, 20 years. And from the time the cubs are born, the caves are all close to the temple and nobody to bother them. And they've been seeing this priest, and this priest regularly fills water for them. Does not disturb them. So they have a bonding with each other. Extremely unique, extremely unique. I've had scientists, biologists coming, researchers coming and staying with me, but whenever they see this kind of behavior of leopard, they all get a shock which is unexplained nowhere else in the world.
Okay.
Sure, I had a personal experience last year. That was February. That was just before the lockdown. I was back in Jawai with Pratap, and I had the great privilege of taking my little girl and visiting Peva. And we got
Yes.
there very early. It was chilly, and we sat on the Peva steps and took some pictures or selfies. And an hour later, we saw two leopard cubs walking gently on the same steps we were sitting 1 hour before, and disappearing into the jungle. So that's just simply magic.
So we're going to let's run about 4 pictures just to give our audience also a little bit more flavor of some of the leopards over there. And I'm going to pose the next question. Yeah, here's on the temple. These are some of these rocks and you get these deep crevices and spaces there, right? And so we're going to come back to this kind of situation where you have these multiple leopards. But Shatrun, I want to first ask you, what do you see in terms of the uh, evolution of how things have come to this point to have this coexistence? And would they be vastly different to what we could expect in places like, say, Sri Lanka?
You see, talking about Jawai leopards, now leopards are solitary creatures. But here you will see leopards living in groups, 4, 5, 7. There is a person with a picture of 12 also. That's a very old picture. Not in those times, those digital cameras were not there. He's taken it with his real camera.
Yeah.
So, like I said, whenever any scientist, biologist comes here, we need to have a proper study also of these leopards, the behavior, which proper research till now nobody has done. And anybody, whoever comes here, they actually get really confused about the behavior patterns. They breed so much. Where do they move from here? The new litter, we have no idea also.
Yeah.
But behavior pattern, sorry.
Yeah, so if you can elaborate a little bit on that, because that's one of the questions I had, which is, what do you think about this territory overlap as well as the migration aspects? I know there's no research. We discussed this when I was there, I remember. Well, what do you all see? Because here there's a huge battle when there's a territory overlap, but we don't see that in Jawai.
See, like I said, the territories here again are very small of the leopards. One male leopard would be sharing about 4 to 5 females in that 3 to 5 square kilometers of the male territory. They don't have to venture much out to form big territories because food is already available there. Water is already available. Shelter is already available. Now, the biggest concern here is every time there are new cubs, and we've been following them, and one day they just move out. And where do they go? We have no idea about them. But what I honestly think what my experience over the years says, that most of the leopards, they move out during winters, and when they get out of the Jawai region in winters in Rajasthan, all the crops are up. The wheat, the corn, the bajra, all these crops are up. They take cover of these crops and move out to different areas like Mount Abu Wildlife Sanctuary, Kumbhalgarh Wildlife Sanctuary. There have been incidents where there is a sighting of leopards near Jodhpur town, near even they move right to the desert, till the Thar desert last year. So I think they take cover of these crops and then they move out. But honestly, we've requested the Indian Institute of Wildlife Sciences that some study needs to be done about the movement patterns. We have no clue where do they go.
All right, that's fascinating, really. So let's run two more slides, and then I want to get on the video before I let the cat out of the bag on this topic, literally. So these are the kind of typical scenes, and we've seen a lot of these kind of scenarios where this is where the entire families live in. Let's roll this video, and we'll ask the audience to kind of stay with this video for 3 minutes, enjoy this, and then we'll talk through. So, Shatrun, let's talk a little bit about what we are starting to see here. I think
So
we're just about the edge of that, but this unique pattern that we see in Jawai, where you know it's dreamland for many males, I think. But you have this
probably
behavior with multiple males and a single female. Is that right?
Multiple, this is a picture of two males breeding with one female at a single time.
Wow. Tell us about this behavior, because that's very interesting.
Uh, Chitral, what I think is, I mean, in Bera, like I said, the area is limited, very limited, big hills, good caves. The ideal, I mean, the area is very limited, and leopard being a very adaptive cat. I mean, they've been living in rural areas, they've been living in urban areas, close to cities. What I think is they've learned to coexist with each other, and that solitary nature in this part of Bera is not as much like the other parts. They are all living in groups. What I think is because of the area being limited, they've learned to cooperate with each other or something. But I mean, like the picture that you see, that one male breeding, two males breeding with one female. Now, the male on the right side, that was the territorial old maid, and on the left, the one which is on top, is a young male trying to take over the territory. And this was a unique thing that what I observed was that the older male, whenever he was mating, and as soon as he used to get tired, the younger one, he used to move out, and the younger one used to come. So this is something really unique about this area. And it's not once that has happened. We've seen such things many times.
Okay, so I see a couple of known names, Anjali and a couple of the other people who are keen on leopard behavior and researchers on the call. I'm sure these would be interesting things one day for different researchers to compare notes. So, talk to us a little bit about, let's run one or two more slides. I saw some one or two more slides which have one or two mating scenes. Let's skip these two slides, guys. And Shatrun, if you can talk to us a little bit around the compensation side, right? So the next picture I think is around, gives you a flavor of the kind of people here, right? So you have these wonderful looking people, very simple, amazing kids, really spontaneous. All of that, we had a blast with them. Talk to us about this whole compensation program, and
So,
what's working there.
the our most efficient way here is the compensation network, what is here. So anytime if a leopard makes a kill, for example, if a goat is for 5,000 rupees, buffalo is 20,000, and camel is much more. What the most effective compensation scheme is active in this part of the area. When wherever the animal makes a kill, the forest department immediately comes, takes the pictures. If the forest department is not available, all the hotels, their drivers, their trackers in the car have got cameras. Somebody takes the pictures, sends it to the forest department, and within the 15-20 days the compensation amount comes to the farmer. In
Right.
any case, if the compensation does not, by any case, or something gets late, we all hoteliers pool in the money and give it to the farmer. So his problem is immediately solved. There is no conflict.
Right. So,
And what we've told the farmers and we've taught the farmers, for example, if the leopard has killed an adult goat, when they get the money, for example, 5,000 rupees, not to go and buy an adult goat, rather buy two female goats, which is for 2,500 rupees each. And goats breed twice a year. So what happens is just you lose one animal, but end of it, within a year or year and a half, you gain 4 to 5 more animals.
right. So, how did you all go about these different training and education programs for the community? It seems there's a lot of work which has happened to come to this point of, continued coexistence, where the economics of tourism and all of that is also starting to now come in.
Yes, what happens is we are very regularly in touch with the community. We have our meetings together every few months. And like I said, most of the community, directly or indirectly, is connected to the hotel. So over the years, we've been working on these programs. The most important program was the loss of the animal, the livestock for the farmer. And the most important thing was to resolve his problem immediately. Because being in remoted areas, if a farmer has to go to the forest department office, he has to take a bus, he has to go there, he has to get a veterinary to do the praise post-mortem done, and then do it for 1 or 2 times. I mean, he loses a lot of money. So that's when we come in for the farmer. Anytime there's a kill, they get in touch with us. We do all the exercise for the farmers. So immediate relief they get.
Great. So I see two questions. I mean, one, they're both related to populations. One is asking around, what kind of people population is in this area. The other one is really around what kind of livestock population and density of livestock do you have in this area, Shatrun?
See, density of people in this area now. I would be talking only about this 20 square kilometers in which our main focus of the leopard is, would be around anywhere between 2 lakhs to 2.5 lakhs, and livestock would definitely be more.
Okay. So, but you were talking of each family having a couple of numbers, or
Yeah,
ballpark.
each
What do you
family
think?
generally has about 20 to 30 goats or sheep or buffaloes and cattle.
Right. And then I'm also aware that there was a like a private sector run vaccination program, and other
That is
things
what
of.
I
Yeah.
generally do is here, like there is a lot of cattle. The farmers are dependent on the cattle. So what we've done is to ensure that no wildlife, I mean, from domestic animal, no viruses get to the wild animal. Generally, these cattle carry a disease known as foot and mouth disease. So every year we get all the cattle vaccinated. There's a joint program by us and by the government department. We don't even leave any animal because most of the animals' drinking points, the domestic animals and the wild animals, are the water holes maintained by the farmers. So what happens is when a domestic animal drinks that water who is infected by this disease can pass this disease to other antelopes, other wildlife. So every year we do in March a proper vaccination camp for these farmers where all the cattle, everything gets vaccinated, not even a single animal is left out.
Wow. So, Shatrun, this in a sense might sound a little bit like almost an artificial or a very unique environment where you have this prey base, you have this religious angle, you have this population, you have this coexistence. Do you think it is something that is scalable, or there's something which can happen in other areas along these lines, or you think it's very unique
See,
and
it is very unique, but again, it's a lesson to learn. If it can happen here, why not anywhere else? I mean, we don't have a forest department role in this area. It's all managed by the local community and by the tourism sector. And we
right?
are working perfectly fine without any conflict. It's just that proper coordinations, we form our own rules, we give animal the space, we make sure the compensations happen on time. I mean, it's a proper network with each other's hand we are holding. I mean, it's a proper coordinated chain. What we do,
Yes.
if we can do it here, I mean, it can happen anywhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this gives us, gives different communities hope. So, livestock of this magnitude, have they been always around in this landscape, or has it resulted in livestock invading the?
It has always been here. In fact, in the earlier days, there was more livestock. Now, with the younger generations coming, most of them are going to cities for work, but the livestock and the leopards and the rabaris have always been here.
Okay, so I guess you could probably go back several hundred years or whatever, if that to be the
Yes,
case.
yes,
Very interesting. So you spoke about all this coexistence. I remember, just before I get on to another very nice video, I remember we did one or two interesting night safaris there, right, with
yes.
you, and this was amazing because we got to see leopards out in the night and that whole behavior and all. So, and on a different day we did some drives to some of those mountains on top of the rocks. We were driving across rocks in the Jeep, and it was like, for me, it was amazing. But
Right.
so in that context, who does the self-regulation, or how do you all set up your own rules? Because if not, we have the Jeep Safari nightmare in our whole Yala area, where the safari drivers have become a law unto themselves, and the conservation angles have all just got thrown out of the window, and economics and business has taken over. What has stopped that from happening there?
You see, what we've done is we've formed a Jawai Conservation Society here, which all the hoteliers take actively part. Once a month, there is a meeting. What we do is, for example, if on one hill there's a leopard, other areas there's not been any sighting, and we think that today it might get crowded, we all communicate with each other. We have a WhatsApp group, so we generally know which hotel, how many cars would be coming. If we see that the number is more of the vehicles is going to be a nuisance there, what we do is we make turns of the cars coming in. For example, five lots of cars or 10 lots of cars would be coming in, keeping a distance from each other, seeing the animals for 10-15 minutes, proper sighting, and then they come out. We let the other batch go in.
Wow. So your self-regulation, even with government intervention and so many people, we have totally failed to kind of get going in this area.
You see, what
So,
happens is in this, the first most important, the animal gets his space. There's no nuisance, no people screaming, shouting, or anything. No, if there are too much cars, there would be too much car movement. We are again creating a nuisance there. And
yeah,
secondly, the most important thing, the wildlife who's coming or the guest who's coming, each hotel's guest is satisfied by a sighting because everybody gets a chance, a share to watch it. So we don't let any dissatisfied guests go from here. And then they go and recommend other guests. So it's a benefit to the community, to the tourism industry, to the wildlife. In every way, everybody is satisfied.
right. I mean, I certainly can in one debate with Chitral for you, which is that the sighting experience there is a much calmer experience than the nerve-wracking Yala experiences. That's for sure. Uh, let's get on to a very interesting another little film, because this we spread the conversation. But I saw Anjali had asked another question. How was the situation before y'all's intervention with the compensation and all? Was there a problem? Because I remember on one side you said for 100 years you didn't have too much of conflict. So was it the compensation model which kind of brought it? I mean, there have been many things which have changed in the world over 100 years. So
The
how far?
compensation system was always there, even during the states' time, during the Maharajas' times in India.
Oh
There was
wow. Okay.
there was a special forest department set up by the each state, independent state. In those time, they had the proper census was maintained for their huntings or for their wildlife, whatever records, and the compensation system was always there in India.
Great. So, I mean, let's look at a bit more of what's the other kind of wildlife which is also there, because, when you look at this whole ecosystem, like we just heard a little while ago, you have some amazing diversity. So here's a little glimpse of the added diversity, and then we'll continue the discussion. Tell us a little bit about, that experience, as well as, some of the interplay between, these different cats. Have you seen anything of interest?
Yes, rusty spotted cat. We've been having decent sightings, and the desert cat again very difficult to photograph. We've got that also. But yes, this project was my biggest nightmare because I had photographed the rusty spotted cat, but where it lived to find that den site and put our camera traps, that was really very challenging. But later on, we managed to get that place, and we got a beautiful sequence of the rusty spotted cat.
Wow. So, Shatrun, you were speaking a lot about the hoteliers and the operators and the different roles they play. So, I have two questions. What are some things that, operators, hoteliers in and around Sri Lanka can do in, let's say, places like Yala, which we can take a leaf out of kind of what you're doing. And an important question I want to ask is, what about things like land grabbing, right?
Yes.
We have a acute hunger. It seems the Sri Lankans are, you know, whatever land is there, it's up for grabs legally or illegally. And if you wait long enough, it seems whatever you take illegally will finally be made legal. So, what is the behavior you see there?
You see, what was the first question before the land grabbing one?
Yeah, the role of the hoteliers and the operators in conservation, and what tips for Sri Lanka.
You see, we've done a very nice system that we've followed here in Jawai region. What happened in Rajasthan in 2017, Project Leopard was launched. Like we have the Project Tiger. The first time Rajasthan is the first state to launch Project Leopard in 2017. After which we formed Jawai Leopard Conservation Society of ours. And in this, what we do is whatever guests are coming in, they contribute a little amount. You could probably, like Sri Lanka is a big, you've got Yala, a lot of guests comes to Yala. So all the hotels should form a society, and all the guests coming in should, they should keep a certain tax. They could call it a conservation tax. So with very little amount as 100 rupees each, and use that money for leopard conservation, for compensations, or what I see is, for example, in Sanjay Gandhi National Park, there are a lot of human-animal conflicts near Mumbai, and most of these attacks on humans are a lot of houses there. The small houses where workers live don't have bathrooms. They all go out in the forest to do bathroom early morning, and that's when a leopard cannot identify whether it's a wild animal or whether it's a human being, and eventually it ends up in a kill. So you can get these kinds of money donations and build probably bathrooms or use it for any cause, whatever you think for conservation in that area. That is what we do here. And coming back to land grab, that is a very interesting question that you asked me. This area had a problem. A lot of people wanted to come buy lands here, grab, same like what you were discussing, what happened in Sri Lanka. But now what we've done is about wherever our forest boundary is, they've identified the area as leopard conservation, Jawai leopard conservation. And 2 kilometers from this area, aerially through a GPS, no new new commercializations of land resorts or land conversions can happen. So whatever happens is, you could probably, Yala is a national park. Now, Bera Jawai is not a national park, nor it's a sanctuary. It's a small conservation area. In national parks, what happens in India, it's 10 to 15 kilometers, the zone, where no new land conversions can happen, no new commercial opportunities can happen. If somebody wants to come in, probably they can start off with a homestay with maximum 3 to 4 rooms. That would benefit the locals in the area. Or if some new big hotels or chains are coming, they are all within 5 to 10 kilometers outside your core, whatever your national park boundary is. So here in Jawai, it is 2 kilometers. Nothing can happen within those 2 kilometers of the area.
Okay. Um, I'm going to probably come back to your suggestion later on at the end with Chitral. But I see Dr. Inoka has asked an interesting question, because even I saw little things. I remember when we were there, we were walking around and there was a roadside tap, and that built a bed at which water collects before it kind of goes out and flows into the dust. And we asked what was that, and you all said that that's built by the people for the animals, so that even the water that drips after people collect water gets collected in a cement small area for drinking. And
Corrected. Nothing gets wasted.
yeah, so that's
Correct.
an amazing kind of behavior. But the question Inoka is asking is, what about the fear factor among people? Does that exist, or it's just
The
generally not
local
at all?
community, they don't fear leopard because we've not had any human-animal conflict with the leopards in the area. And all these rabaris, you both must have noticed that grazing is on the hills where the leopards are during the daytime, and during the daytime they're all inside caves. What the animals here fear is the sloth bear and crocodiles, because
Okay.
we've had incidents with sloth bears and crocodiles.
Wow. So, on the leopard survival, there was another question. Do you have any idea around what kind of odds or percentages of the offspring survive? Any kind of studies? And do you know of any inbreeding, given that it's almost a relatively close community? It's open, as you know, but it's a unique community.
We've noted and photographed interbreedings. There is interbreeding in this area happening among leopards, and yes, we have interbreedings here.
Okay. Any studies done which kind of indicate whether that causes any challenges, or have there been any studies of leopards from outside coming and residing here?
Outside also there are leopards that come. A lot of times there are new males coming in the area that we've never seen, and suddenly a new male pops up. There are new males coming in, and there are new females also coming in the area. And talking about you were asking about the cubs. Here generally leopards would female would give birth to 2 to 3, and in most of the cases, I would say about 90% of the cases, not 90, 85 to 90%, yes, they will make it to the adulthood.
Wow, that's a fairly high, high statistic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm just going to broaden the conversation a little bit because I'm going to talk of this. Just go to the next slide as well. I mean, this was a early cold morning and we were on the far side, but at the other end of this was these, the Sarus crane, a spot-billed duck, a coom duck, all in this one image, and I was going like, we'll go berserk trying to chase these birds in Sri Lanka. Talk to me around some of the bird life, and do you get a lot of people coming for that diversity, or is it the leopards only which seem to be the big attraction? Because you have a lot of
the main attraction is the leopard, but you see, leopards being nocturnal animals, the safaris are only in the early mornings and late evenings. Now, during the daytime, all the guests have time. So a lot of people go to this lake, the Jawai Lake, which is a beautiful landscape. Lot of more than 200 species of birds come here. There are crocodiles here. So yes, this lake itself has a excellent biodiversity. One can, if somebody is into birding or is into nature or in photography, they can spend hours here.
Superb. So I know we may have only a few minutes more, depending on when you get a call to kind of take our leave. But let me ask you a little bit more on. Let's go to the last slide, guys. On the so that's another beautiful night shot. So talk to us a little bit about the differences of when it's a night safari versus the day safaris, and how do the jeep drivers and the other conservationists and all, what should we watch out for? We don't have a big practice of too much of night safaring in Sri Lanka, and since much of our wildlife is in and around the parks, so it's a bit different here. Talk to us a little bit about that.
What happened when you guys had come, we used to do night drives here, but now with suddenly tourism, booming here, many vehicles, adding on every year, vehicles are adding. Now what we do is generally we see the animal in the evening or in the morning, and by the time it's getting dark, we leave the place. So the animal is more relaxed. We don't disturb the animal. As soon as let's say by 6:30 or by latest by 7, there is no car there left now.
Okay.
So the animal is free to move. No cars around the animal. They are because at times it gets crowded, like I said. And then the animal is totally free. Being a nocturnal animal, that's what the animal wants.
So, Shatrunjay, what do you think is the role for government? You're talking of an environment which has come to a wonderful place almost despite government or without government in a sense. And we are seeing, scenarios where with the best of intent or effort or whatever, the role of government hasn't done enough on the conservation side to create this kind of more harmonious relationship. What could we learn from this?
See, when it comes to our part in Jawai, most of the people, when the forest department is required, for example, if any leopard dies or if there is any disease or wherever we think it's the government's roles to take care, that's when we involve the government. Otherwise, we do not involve the government much in this part because the first thing is it's the people and the animals always living together without any governance by the government. And what happens is most of the farmers, especially, I don't know about Sri Lanka, but in India, if there's a farmer close to a national park or a protected area. Whenever they think about the forest department, there are two different. They are North Pole and it's South Pole. They don't. They get scared that their land is going to be probably taken over with the forest department or things like that. But generally in this area, it's all done locally with the community, with the forest rangers, with their concern, the government concern. But we generally don't have much role of the government. It's just managed by us.
Okay. So then I see a question from Vinod, which kind of takes off from that, saying, what is the structure of these community-based organizations, and how does that whole thing work? Who makes the decisions? What are the roles?
You see, the community structures are for all the hoteliers have one representative of theirs, either the owner or the senior management is the part of it. Every month there is a meeting, and in the community, what happens is there's a sarpanch who's the head of the village. And in Rabari community, there are few people. They have like a sort a different community. What they have, where they have their heads and their representatives. So all these people, the heads, the Rabari community heads, which are about 4 5 people per village, them, the hoteliers, and the forest department. So this is how we form our community, the local forest ranger or the forest guard here.
Okay. Superb. So Shatrun, for the last few minutes of your chat, if you don't mind, let's get you back on video, and hopefully it will last.
Yeah,
Right.
not a
Uh,
problem.
so there's a question whether whether you've seen this different behavior on the leopards when it comes to baby crocodiles, and do they uh, move a lot near the waters and lakes instead of only on the rocks?
Sorry?
Do you see a lot of behavior where the leopards move more around the lakes and the water edges, or is it only on the rocks? And do they feed on baby crocodiles? Two questions.
Baby crocodiles, I've personally not seen or heard in this area. And generally, they prefer moving on the hills only. And but there are a few hills, like there is one hill, Devgiri. There was a incident which we photographed and recorded. The female had given birth there, and then the monsoon came, and the entire hill was surrounded with water. So this female used to swim every day for about a kilometer to the regular land, and then pray, and then come back swimming.
Wow. Fascinating.
Like every time I've spent my entire 10 years here photographing, filming leopards. I mean, spending as much time. And the moment I think, okay, now I know a lot about their behavior, understand a lot about their behavior, and every time they confuse me with some new thing.
Yeah, I mean, when we came there and we saw that picture which had those 12 or 13 leopards all on that steps of that rock that
Steps.
we all went and we were sitting on, it's like,
Yes, yes.
I can remember Shamindra Chitral and myself were, totally fogged. So that's so much more to learn. And that's why I think the researchers also find these conversations interesting. We'll first put Chitral on the spot before we come back to you for a question. Chitral, time to fork out. Shatrun is suggesting that, we put maybe $50 a room, and no, they've got you on full screen, so you can't say no. You think that's an option to start talking to the hoteliers to kind of set some funds aside in small quantities based on room occupancy or something?
I think we can do that, Sriyan. We started our own little project Leopard back in 2011, inspired by late Dr. Ravi's efforts of giving pens for the cattle farmers. And we've done that for 9 years now. And when we started that model, we had the same concept of back then, $50 per room night, but thereafter, well-wishers and the John Keel's Foundation has helped out to raise enough money. But I think going forward, post-COVID world, we can look at synergy more than individual efforts. I see something fundamentally different in the Yala Kirinda theater in Sri Lanka versus Jawai, because the intent is there, but the brand consciousness and the fierce competition between brands are a lot more here in the Yala theater than in Jawai. That kind of isolates us into islands, and we start working individually. That's what has been happening, because I know there are many other facilities around Yala in both sides, Katagama and Palatupana, doing or trying to do conservation work, but they fiercely keep it for their own brands rather than holding hands. So I think as the world becomes safe to travel, as it opens up, we are ready to welcome tourists. I think we have a duty to cooperate and become one and synergize this effort.
Great. So thank you. Thanks for that pledge. I know people like, on Kulu Safaris and all have been close partners with WNPS supported. I know they do some similar work, and I'm pretty sure some of the other big hotels, Jetwing, and, so many nice, wonderful locations around there who I'm sure will be always happy to do good work. So let's pick up the conversation offline. Shatrun, thank you for that inspiration. And
Pleasure.
what about human traps? I mean, we had a miserable year last year across the country with snares having a devastating toll on leopards. Do you find much of human traps for any particular reason there?
No, we don't even find a single snare here. Zero cases of poaching also. Zero.
Wow. So, in some ways, I mean, we saw the community was, living marginal existence, coming up in life. It's that kind of community, but in many ways, it seems to be far more enlightened than the so-called knowledgeable, enlightened communities who walk around preaching to those communities today in the cities. Um, Give us a few parting thoughts on what we could learn from what are the lessons we could take out from this.
You see, like I always think tourism is very, very important for conservation. And for any conservation, commercialization is important, but responsible commercialization. Without commercialization, without the revenues coming in, conservation cannot happen. Anybody, for example, if you want to do something, you want to give any farmer a compensation or something, you require some funds to be there. So commercialization is important for conservation, but responsibly, you should have an action plan how it would benefit both for the community and for the wildlife.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of commercialization, I'll use that opportunity to put plug in one of my usual announcements, which is just to thank our corporate partners, because we are funded on a lot of the work we do with thanks to NDB, NTB, the Sampath Bank, Mr. Ajita Di Costa, TJ, Brandix, JK Office Automation, Sanjay Lanka, Spa Ceylon, Colombo Jewelry Stores, Abans. So these kind of partners have been really supporting us in many ways. I want to thank them because it's their impetus which has helped us reach these kind of conversations. And please, as a member, anybody who's out there, please continue to keep the financial support. We need a lot of it to kind of continue this work, as well as fund some of the legal battles. And you could do that by making sure you pay your subscription and things like that. Interestingly, some of you may not recall, but after Chitra's visit, we were actually able to launch a youth ambassador program, and we actually sent 2 young kids out there, and they went to Jawai, looked at this work, and I think last month those 2 ambassadors were in the areas of Sigiriya, talking to cattle farmers and trying to kind of have some dialogue along these lines on conservation. So, Shatrun, just so you know that exposure you gave those kids, is coming in helpful in Sri Lanka in small ways, but they are doing their part as well. And I want to thank you, since we have the opportunity to do that. Thank you for hosting them over there. And we've also enlisted the help of some of the Sri Lankan, better known big names in terms of, Mahela Javardhana, Jayanti, Johan, and Adam. These kind of names have come forward as conservation ambassadors. So we are trying to get that message out whenever we can. We have partners like CJ and Sarva Advertising, Dilma Tea, who constantly support us. Um, so I think where we'd like to go is to kind of see what more we can pick up from these lessons learned. In the past, we had people who came and challenged us to kind of launch conservation photography competitions, and we did that a while back to kind of bring different messaging. So Shatrun, I hope we can pick up a few things from this conversation, and we will certainly continue to kind of build a dialogue with some of the hoteliers and other players in and around. We can maybe start with Yala and see what little ways we can do to kind of reduce the conflict. Right now there is a huge amount of tension between the commercial interests and the conservation interests, where Yala in many forms have changed across the last 2 decades, not for the well-being of the animals, but certainly the balance has to be restored. And you're offering us some glimmers of hope, and we have to figure out how to do that. But also we have to learn from the models that you're putting forward to say, what does that teach us when it comes to leopard conservation and other animal and ecosystem conservation? Because if we are, as the apex predator, if we can do more to conserve the leopards in this community and in our communities, we stand to benefit a lot. Sri Lankan leopard is a lot more widespread outside of the wildlife parks. It's predominant in most parts of the country, and so therefore this is not just about Yala. This is a lesson for other communities in and around different parts of Sri Lanka, which are outside the wildlife parks, and what more we could do there before some of the traditional conflict of commercialization and other interests hits those areas. Um, Chitral, any thoughts before we kind of bring the conversation to a close?
I think, as you said, Shriyan, there is much to learn from this amazing and delicate balance which has been maintained and flourished over 100 years in this amazing place, Jawai, supported by people like Shatrunjay and his friends and other businesses. So let's keep this dialogue going about how we can adopt something as a model in Yala, because that's the showcase of conservation here in Sri Lanka, and that's a good place to start and try to replicate that elsewhere. I just want to leave you with one thought. 10 years ago when Jonathan and Angela Scott came to Sri Lanka, Angela saw a couple of leopards playing in a mountain in Yala, and she just came up with this amazing note saying, if God ever created a patch of land for leopards, it must be Yala. But after I visited Jawai and saw these amazing caves and the mountains, I feel that if there was ever a patch of land created by an architect for leopards, it must be Jawai.
Oh, well said, Chitral.
Yeah.
And I would also like to tell both of you through this webinar that anytime you want our support from Jawai, or if you have some biologists or some students, they want to come here, experience Jawai as a research point of view or as a learning point of view, we could do this on a regular way every year, that you could send one or two students here, and they can spend about a week's time like how those two students spent, and they can learn something from Jawai and take it back to Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Shatrun. That's amazing. So I'm going to take you up on that, because about a year or two ago, we did a similar initiative where we were going to send a young kid over to Kenya. And, then unfortunately COVID came. If not, it was scheduled for last year. So maybe we'll launch an initiative and ask people to apply and, run some process to pick the one or two students and, try to make that an annual thing for a few days with your help. And, thank you very, very much for that. That's going to be deeply appreciated, because there are lots of youngsters who are increasingly studying leopard populations. And, I've just been told on the chat that there are some ongoing plans for collective work on conservation in the Paltapana buffer zone. Anjali just put a note there. And so that's good to hear. And, anything we do will always be to kind of add on to those programs. I don't think WNPS has too much of worry about trying to brand anything we do. So I think if there's something that we can plug into, we'll join in partnership. If it's something that we can bring to the table with others, I think we are always open to that. I think this island is too small to compete. I've seen too much of that. Like Chitral mentioned, I think that's one of the reasons why maybe we are in a bit more of a mess than we deserve to be. And I think we need to partner more and find more synergy. So I think Jawai gives us lots of hope to kind of restore our ecosystems to what you're describing in a different way. So Shatrun, thank you very, very much. You have, this simple talk has launched two things. One is exchange program for young researchers, which we will certainly package and launch very fast within a month, because I know we have the format available. And then as soon as travel can ease up, we will have someone identified to kind of work with you and come over. And
we'll
then
be more than happy to host them.
Fantastic. And, having had the pleasure of staying there, Shatrun's Lodge is, amazing. You wake up and you look out into this leopard territory. So look it up online. And any of you, when travel eases up, I'm sure Chitral would be more than eager to take his next bunch of guests over there for that travel. While in the meantime, we'll look at the exchange program. And so on behalf of WNPS, Shatrun, thank you very much. I know you had a tight slice of time to join us, and the connectivity hasn't been great. So we were fingers crossed saying, we hope this will last an hour, because even yesterday the power goes out and suddenly he's left high and dry. And so thanks for sharing. And
pleasure. It's been my pleasure.
We'll let you and Chitral fight it out on whether Yala or Jawai is really the best. Somebody had asked the question on the chat, what's the best place for Yala for leopard watching? And we will end up saying it's a tie, but the experiences are very different. And therefore, we would, I would suggest that you visit both and then make your own comparison.
Own comments, yes.
Yeah, but they're both amazing places in their own rights. They have their challenges, but they, both have a very special place. So thank you. And thanks to all the thousands of people and hundreds of people who join us regularly on these chats and on FB. And we hope we join you next time. Next time, we have some interesting conversations. And I just want to, we have some new partnerships lined up who are planning to bring us some talks very soon. So I don't want to spill the beans on that. We'll package that very soon and let you know. But as always, we have more and more exciting news as more and more partners reach out to us for the work we do. And so thank you once again. Good luck. And I hope we can fight off, some of these terrible, terrible battles that we are almost on the losing side in Sri Lanka. The mining threat in Mena and in some other parts of the country is big. We've seen some of our mangroves and other places under severe siege. And as we speak, a lot of us are doing our different parts. And I know more people out there are doing their own parts. So let's just keep doing the little things we can. And with that, let me wish everyone a wonderful night and thank NTB once again for being our amazing, amazing partner. And this series of talks, the NTB WNPS monthly lecture series will continue. I hope you join us next month on this designated Thursday of the month. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Chitral, Shatrun, and Shamindra, who's probably out there, and our third leg of the stool that we went out on this wonderful trip. Good night, everyone, and thank you on behalf of WNPS.
Thank you. Good night.